Well, throughout the whole of Europe and in some places in the Middle East, today was a peculiar day called April Fool's Day, and it's called variously in different parts of the world. I think in France, somehow it's to do with fish, and we know that it began by a dispute over when the year starts. It was said that the year started, roughly, approximately April 1st, something like that, so many days after a particular date. And we know that that idea has been going on for some time, and we see reference to this idea and this date in Chaucer's tales. But in any event, it's a wonderful opportunity to discuss what we might call the art of foolishness. I'm not encouraging you to cultivate this, except in a certain sense of the word. But somehow we have carefully cultivated its art. We have carefully avoided knowledge and wisdom. There is a reference that we will find in the Katha. The Katha will talk about the blind leading the blind and both falling into the pit. And they will also infer a number of other places those who are wise as opposed to those who are not. And I think it's fair to say, and true to say, most of us are suffering from foolishness. And I think foolishness comes in three areas. Whenever we feel that we are a victim, or whenever we feel fear itself, then this is foolishness if it's true that there's a constant divine presence like a guiding helmsman behind everything. We gave a meditation earlier about a divine helmsman or a divine person or a divine entity guiding you. The Katha tells us, avidyaya mantare varta manaha swayam dhiraha panditam manyamanaha tandra myamanaha pariyanti mudha andeneva niyamana yatandaha. Fools living in darkness. That's why I also added the prayer. What is that prayer? It's getting down to the hub of the contrast between light and day, foolishness and wisdom. Lead us from darkness to light. Now, curiously enough, one of the great texts called the Nasadya Suktam begins off the idea of creation with those words. He tells us, he says, Na sat asit tadanam. Existence was not then, when? Before everything came, tables and chairs, you and me, the stars, the sky, galaxies, space itself. Before anything like that existed, what was there? Well, existence wasn't there. And non-existence also wasn't there. It sounds like a paradox. Because non-existence implies, still a kind of existence. The world wasn't, nor the sky beyond. What covered it? Where was it? And for whose protection? Was water there? Unfathomable depth of water? Was it like that? There's so many questions being asked. Earlier I was commenting, if you want to see what was the beginning of any kind of religious inclination, first of all, we seem to have a need. We have a need for food on the physical level. Actually, we have a need for exercise and all the rest of it. We have a need to express our thoughts through speech. We have a need to communicate. We have a need for physical shelter. We have a need to go through all the myriad kinds of ideas in the head, as it were, We have a need to be comforted and loved and feel secure. We have a need to be nurtured. We have a need to live. Now, all of these needs can be supplied, well, not all of them can be supplied by our own self-effort. We are dependent for many of the things. We are dependent on our activities for food. And coming out of, let's say, the Neolithic age, we get this by getting a career or a job and working. And the fruit of that we get is in monetary form, and with that we are able to purchase goods. It wasn't always like that. There was a time where we were just bartering. There was another time where we were hunting and gathering. And later we were sowing agricultural crops. There was always something that we were doing. This was called karma and still is called karma. And then there is the religious side of things, fulfilling a need. The earliest kinds of things would be formal sacrifices, formal structured sacrifices involving prayers, mantras, offerings. And throughout the world, these varied. Sometimes human offerings were there. And then there was a test of faith. Let's take the Abrahamic tradition where Abraham himself was tested. What should I do? Take your son, take him to a certain spot and sacrifice him, human sacrifice. Now, what would a person normally do? Anyway, he did it. He came, and just as he was about to plunge the knife, the Lord stopped him, stopped his hand. No, don't do that. Unfortunately, he said, take a lamb instead. So a creature was there and a creature was slaughtered. And from that, we have a whole Christian theology about it, which has a great deep meaning. Because Christ is supposed to sacrifice himself. We're coming to that, those episodes, when we come later in this month to Easter. So being a self-sacrificing person, that level of understanding, is that being a fool? Somebody allowing themselves to be taken, captured, tortured, somebody allowing themselves to sacrifice their life, somebody allowing to live a lifestyle and bare minimum. Is that person a fool? Of a type, yes. We'll always recall that Ramakrishna posed himself the question. He says, some people say that I'm mad. In other words, a fool. Some people say I'm mad. Why do you say, he says to his first teacher, Bhairavi Brahmani. She says, yes, you're mad, but it's of a good kind. Those people are mad for this and mad for that, mad for satisfactions here and there, mad for gold or for wealth or for praise or whatever it is. And you are mad for God. That's a good kind of madness. All right. But most people are not like that. Most people are looking for their comfort. So what does this say? Fools dwelling in darkness, but thinking themselves wise and erudite. Oh, you can look around all over the place and find it. You can see it in yourself as well, probably. At some stage or other, you say, I know what I'm talking about. Or you have some opinion, and you are irritated when somebody maybe brings a counter opinion. Perhaps that's the case. So there are moments when you think, I'm wise. As long as you say I'm wise, you're also saying everybody else is foolish, are fools. So there's an arrogance about that, and that itself is foolishness. So, but thinking themselves wise, I know the way, you follow me. They go round and round by various tortuous paths, like the blind led by the blind. It's a beautiful, beautiful picture being portrayed that the Upanishads bring out. The blind led by the blind, and both fall into the pit. Another text tells us, both will fall in. This blindness, we don't really acknowledge. We think that we are wide awake. We think that we are intelligent. But all of this comes from a kind of blindness that we really call ignorance. Lead us from the unreal to the real. There's a great profound depth of analysis that needs to go into that one statement. So we think that this world is real. You touch me, I feel it. You hurl words of abuse, I feel it inside. You hurl words of praise or shower praise on me, I feel elated. You look after your health and are free from disease, you feel good. You catch a cold, you don't feel so good. So all of these things are going on, and all of it is registered as reality. And where does religion begin? It begins with that fundamental question about reality. Swami Vivekananda in his Jnana Yoga will tell us exactly that. He'll say that the beginnings of religion is in a search for reality. He says, great is the tenacity with which man, that is mankind, clings to the senses. Yet, however substantial he may think the external world in which he lives and moves, there comes a time in the lives of individuals and of races, nationalities, countries, etc., when involuntarily they ask, is this real? And science asks this question. Every kind of investigation asks this question. Philosophy asks it. And man in raw condition also asks it. And so to the person who never finds a moment to question the credentials of his senses, says Swami Vivekananda, whose every moment is occupied with some sort of sense enjoyment, even to him death comes. And he's also compelled to ask, is this real? A man lives, a man dies. A woman lives, a woman dies. Seasons are there. Seasons are there, 4 types of seasons. In Zimbabwe, we only have 2. In some places, we have another variety of 2 called summer and hell, and that's in the lowest part of the country. But there's a rotation, there's a noticeable change going on, and for that reason, we have to make a preparation. Winter has to be prepared for. Food has to be stocked in seasons which are not productive. There are times for reaping, times for sowing. There's a place in the Bible like that, the Ecclesiastes, a time for living, a time for dying, a time for sowing, a time for reaping. So, Swami Vivekananda says religion begins with this question and ends with its answer. Even in the remote past, where recorded history cannot help us, in the mysterious light of mythology, back in the dim twilight of civilization even, we find the same question was asked, what becomes of this? What is real? Now, if we misunderstand it, then we can classify ourselves truly as fools if we want to cling to the senses or the world of the senses. And this comes out as fear. It comes out as doubt. It comes out as temptation and succumbing to it, the senses. Let us examine each one of these. If I truly understand that there's a reality that never changes, that is always present, if I'm able to put it into a devotional context and understand the Lord of my life who sustains my life and provides me with all resources and all the energy, constantly with me, like a constant friend or companion, encouraging me all the way, supplying me with intelligence, supplying me with resources and a job. Should I at least not acknowledge this presence in a loving way? And should I not offer all the fruits of my activities in that direction? And if I know that I am constantly being supported, if I know that this world is provided as a protective field for my benefit, then what could I fear? And if this leads to a non-dualistic position, which it should do eventually, then the absence of any other entity is enough for fear to go away. And now we can understand before everything all of the thing that we endorse as real is being taken away by this Nasadya Suktam. Existence was not then, nor non-existence. The world wasn't, nor the sky, and so on. We can't imagine a world of nothing, and yet there it is. And then it goes on to say, death was not then, nor immortality. The night was neither separate from day. That one thing unmoving, breathed by its own nature, apart from that, nothing did exist. Then how is it that what does exist, we take as a reality? Well, now we have to see and examine how did it all materialize from that inconceivable nothingness, not even nothing. It was neither existent nor non-existent. We can't apply any term to it. We can't conceive of such a thing. How is it that we get from there to here, as it were? How do we get from being to becoming? What is the line that was crossed? In one of Swami Vivekananda's lectures under the heading of Jnana Yoga, that series of talks, Real and Apparent Man, and so on and so forth, he brings this question up and makes a diagram, absolute on one side, and then a line, and then the manifested. And the manifested and the absolute, well, they're the same entity, but one is in expression and one is in potentiality, not even in potentiality. And so we get that series of things, a potential thing going on to start with. And Ramakrishna will put it in a beautiful way. He will tell us that there are the five senses. Then he'll tell us that from the five senses something else is coming, and so on. But you see, there's not just a link in all of it. There is a causal law taking place. One is causing the next one. And so it goes on. There's a statement like that. That which is the pure Atman, says Ramakrishna, is the great cause of the cause, the gross, the subtle, the causal, and the great cause. The five elements are gross. Mind, buddhi, and ego are subtle. Prakriti, that is, this primal energy. You can think of nature as primal energy and think how modern science, well, 1905 already, from Einstein established, it's all energy. What kind of energy? Primal energy. Is the cause of all of these. Some people say, oh yes, I believe in a kind of God, but that to me is like energy. Yeah, you've got it to as far as it goes, but you haven't gotten to the cause of that. And so, Brahman, pure Atman, no distinction, is the cause of the cause. That means, if I'm convinced that I am this divine cause of the cause, if I am this divine, immortal, infinite self, this pure being, if that is my absolute, true, and real nature, then the next question is, what will I ever have to fear? So fear goes away, making our goal, in some respect, as fearlessness. With every Hindu murti, you'll find the deity at least putting one hand up in reassurance. One mudra is there like that, giving us assurance. You have nothing to worry about. And yet, we catch ourselves in being professional warriors, in a state of anxiety continuously. And that leads then to the second thing, because the opposite of doubt is faith. If I have absolute faith, the faith of a child to be carried, that kind of faith, complete trust that all things are well. I've quoted this Julian of Norwich, who says, all things are well, and all things are well. All manner of things are well. And she's standing from an optimistic point of view, having had a revelation of the highest optimism and bliss in circumstances where the Black Death was there and things were in turmoil. And she now confines herself to the silence of the cell for an intimate encounter with her intimate Lord. And there, the 16 revelations that she gets, all from essentially a pessimistic point of view. Let me suffer what you suffer. Who wants to suffer what? I have sufferings of my own. I don't want to take somebody else's suffering on. That's a normal position. No, let me understand your suffering. Why? Because you suffer for love, and I want to suffer on your behalf as an act of love. But the exploration and the revelation that occurs comes out as, oh, I see your joy. I see nothing but absolute perfection in this. So Brahman, pure Atman, is the cause of the cause. This pure Atman alone is our real nature. What is jnana? What is knowledge? It is to know one's own self and keep the mind in it. It is to know the pure Atman. Now, he's not the first to declare it. Other sages declare it, but that's because they have seen it. That's because it's an experiential thing. Same thing with Ramakrishna. It wasn't just a philosophy. It wasn't academics. It wasn't, oh, I read this somewhere and now I'm telling you. It's from his own direct experience. It is not only logically true, but it is also experientially true. But our position is, no, I am in a kind of small box and I don't want to get out of it. What I see is what I see. But an ant will see it differently, isn't it? Recently, there was a big hubbub about string theory, trying to explain how can it work. Well, it's explained by there must be added dimensions. Imagine you are an ant on a rope. Then you'll see the dimensions differently. That was the example. Since then, not many people have so much faith in that string theory. But the whole idea is we are living in a relative world, in a relative reality, not an absolute reality, and reacting to it. And we need to understand something different and deeper that shakes our conventional understanding so much that all fear goes, that all doubt goes, and that all sense attraction goes. Then we get out of our foolishness. Do you believe in reincarnation? Yes, reincarnation of foolishness. Come again and again, and don't learn the lesson. And you may live myriads of lives to do that. But you can easily get it now. That's the offering. You can get out of your foolishness right now. I often use the example of, let's say, the Shakespearean actor playing the part, let's say, of Hamlet, and thinking that he's Hamlet, goes away in medieval costume, walks around the town. Who are you? I'm Hamlet. No, you're a fool. I often think of that great story, The Emperor's Clothes. You know the story. Well, we have to say once upon a time, there was a king who got tired of his clothing, and he heard there was a very clever tailor in town who made clothes out of special material. And he came to the king and says, yes, I think I can give you something unique. It's not all the way from, the fashion capitals of the world. It's my own invention, but I can show you the finest possible material, the finest thread. Let me start on this project, and I'll present it to you in 1 month's time. 1 month's time, all the court is gathered there, and the king says, okay. And the man holds up an invisible shirt, invisible clothing, invisible cloak. And the king doesn't want to look like a fool. So he says, Oh, that's magnificent. Yes, do you see the line here? Do you see how beautifully it's tailored? Do you see how magnificent colors? They're exquisite, exquisite. If you really, really are wise, you will see it. Of course, fools can't see it. Yes, of course I can see it. Please, put it on. He takes all his clothes off and puts this invisible clothing on. And the courtiers look at it, but they don't want to be foolish either. How is it looking, Prime Minister? Oh, it's the finest thing I ever saw. It's so fine, I want everybody to see it. Let me go through the whole city on the horseback. Then he goes through the whole city on the horseback. And all the courtiers and so-called wise people are saying, look at the magnificence of the king. He's like an emperor shining like the sun. But the common people laugh. They said, he has no clothes on. He's looking like the worst amongst us. He's looking out like the day he was born, you know. And so who was the fool? Those people who were relegated as simply peasants or something, put in a lower class of being, and they turned out to be the wisest ones. How? Because they saw the reality. And the others who thought they were wise were all fools. No finer example could there be of this statement, the blind, going around the blind. Now, not only am I foolish, but I'll say, follow me, and both fall into the pit, or go round and round and never get anywhere. You know, like getting lost in a forest. You're walking, and the person says, I know the way out. And then they come back to the same campfire. No, you didn't go anywhere. This is the normal, so-called normal life we live, and we can surely admit that it is a round of foolishness. And so let us celebrate our foolishness today, April Fool. But the art, is it an art? Yes. We cleverly avoid the reality. We have developed the art of bypassing all of that. Bypassing our reality. We are artfully dodging the fact of reality. Those people living in the world which we call samsara, in the midst of ignorance, in thick darkness, entangled in 100 meshes formed by attachment for sons and for cattle and the rest, says the commentator. Commentator Shankaracharya. Regarding themselves as intelligent and well versed in the scriptures, go round and round. They get into many crooked ways, afflicted with miseries. What kind of miseries? Old age, death, disease, etc. Devoid of discernment, just as the blind, led by the blind, in uneven paths come to great grief. The teachers of humanity generally, therefore, are blind. Anyway, I'll give you a small recap. So the Katha Upanishad mentions that those people, erudite and so on, are fools because they're like the blind leading the blind round and round and round. And actually we can add, and falling into the ditch alike. And then, of course, we have this, the whole idea of teachers like this, people posing as teachers and experts. And there's an abundance of that. And then I gave the story of the emperor with no clothes, you see, and had the fact that he was fooled into thinking that he was wearing the most exquisite clothing because he could not admit that there was nothing there, that was totally invisible. And then the same thing with the courtiers and so on. And it took really those people, simple people, who saw things for what they were. The fact of the matter is we are not seeing things as they actually are. We are seeing things as they are presented, and we are going along with an interpretation. The interpretation that we are using really is sitting in an area of fuzziness because the world that we are experiencing is a mix. It's a mix of the absolute and the relative. It's a mix of the reality and the unreality. It's a mix of the substance and the name and the form being expressed. And we know this by virtue of the science of these three gunas. These three gunas, these ingredients or components that we find in nature, and their juxtaposition, their combination, their expression is the world that we find. And we dive into it fully and react to it. And much of the reaction comes out as fear, much of the reaction comes out as doubt, and much of the reaction comes out as attraction to sense, to the world of senses, the sense enjoyments. How do we counteract this? How do we become wise? How do we shake off this foolishness? So the prayer goes, lead us. That's the first step. If we are fools, then we have to appeal to the omniscient and say, please give me wisdom. Please lead me from this unreal to the real. Please lift us up from this darkness to the light. Please lead us from this round of death upon death into immortality. So that what we are finding, of course, is being entrapped with these, being bound by these. That's why we call them gunas, something that binds you. And then the oft-told story about the three robbers that I repeat from time to time is not my story. Ramakrishna tells it, but I think it's not even his story. He got it from elsewhere. Anyway, it's a well-known story. You have three robbers who all have a binding capacity. Binding in the sense that it's a network. It's one enables release from another one. These we have to use. Another example would be if I have a thorn in my foot, then I remove it with another thorn. I'm using the resources that nature is providing me in order to get out of it. Now, alternative terms are like this. Maya is a term that we're all familiar with. It comes from the same root as magic. And it's inscrutable. And we just read from the Nasadya Suktam that there's an inscrutable origin, even before an origin, it's completely inscrutable. But it's equally inscrutable whatever is projected. Shasti, something is projected. And Ramakrishna tells us like this, again I'll repeat what he says. He says, that which is the pure Atman, that is the fundamental divinity in you, is the great cause, the cause of the cause. And he repeats it again. The gross, the subtle, the causal, and the great cause, the five elements are gross, mind, intellect, and ego are subtle, and Prakriti, that is the primal energy, is the cause of all of these. Let's pause for a moment and understand that. The primal cause of all of this experience is pure energy. Now, energy intrinsically seems to be dynamic, but we know that something has to move it. And what is that? That becomes a mystery to those who don't examine further. So we know that energy itself is not conscious. And we are conscious, and you cannot get conscious from unconscious, and you cannot get existence from non-existence. And you cannot get a movement from something that doesn't have the potential for dynamic movement. And so this absolute, through the fabric of time and space and causation and function, spreads out and diversifies in so many different ways, and so many different creation stories are available to try to make the crude, foolish mind understand this. Step by step, a good teacher will take you, don't take one jump. Here, step by step. The discipline that the jnanis have is quite rare. The practice for them means practice of discernment and practice of detachment. But for the common person, as it were, we have to take the anthropomorphic avenue. We have to bring God, as it were, down to our level. We have to raise our souls up in worship. And for that reason, the great non-dualist Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya, having been a proponent, an ardent proponent of a renaissance, a revival of the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal law that is behind every single religion. And what does he do? He writes the most exquisite hymns, most exquisite poems, expressing his heartfelt love for what he deems to be God. The devotee the other day said, "Oh, there's no mention of God." Ah, you never read Shankaracharya. Even Shankaracharya, in his very small book, Atma Bodha, that is self-knowledge, he writes these verses at the end of such verses, or even beyond that. He's writing these great, great hymns of praises. He writes hymns just as an example. He writes hymns of praise to Shiva. He writes hymns of praise to so many deities. He writes a huge poem on Govinda, Bhaja Govindam, etc. All of this he's doing that, but still reminding us of our own pristine nature. He's right. The cudgel of delusion, he writes like this, and he says this in relation to our topic. Renounce, O fool, your ceaseless thirst for hoarding gold and precious gems. Content yourself with what may come through deeds performed in earlier lives. Devote your mind to righteousness and let dispassion be your law. So how do we get out of our foolishness? Renounce. What does that mean? Does that mean we go off, take on a yellow cloth, sit in a cave, beg for food, say, I won't meet anybody, I want to be antisocial? If you have an antisocial inclination that might appeal to you, no, you don't do that. What are you doing? You renounce your ceaseless thirst. This is the third component of our foolishness. This fear is a component, doubt is a component, and then this attachment to the sense world and the senses and the sense objects and the pleasures that it gives on the basis we all wish to be happy. And it's a ceaseless thirst, he describes it. He says, it never ends. You have to renounce it. Ceaseless thirst for what? He says for hoarding gold. Well, for money, for wealth, precious gems. Content yourself with what may come. Imagine how content you would be if you were sure of Jesus' statement, the lilies of the field are clothed and the birds of the air are fed. We don't have to ask for it like a beggar. You take the beggarly aspect out of it. Oh Lord, give me this, give me that, with the doubt involved, and maybe a bargaining process. If you give me this, then I'll do, thousands and thousands. I'll make a pilgrimage. Lent is here. Oh, how will I appease God? Oh, I'll give up. Some may say I'll give up work. No, that's not giving up at all. So through deeds performed in earlier lives, devote your mind to righteousness. You didn't come to this life by accident. There's accumulation of deeds that were all merits. And devote your mind to righteousness, in other words, to the path of the preferable, to the things that are morally good, that is selfless, to the higher values, to sattva. And let dispassion be your law on the basis that this is not real. This is only there as an environment for me to grow. That's all. The flower doesn't say, I'm living in the reality. The flower takes it for granted that there will be air, that there will be sunshine, that there will be nourishment in the soil, sufficient water. It doesn't ask for it. It simply takes what is there already and uses it and transforms a small seed like this into a beautiful yellow flower with a trumpet on the end. Daffodil. Remember, he says, riches bring out grief. Truly, no joy abides in them. A rich man even fears his son. This is his portion everywhere. Who is your wife and who is your child? Strange indeed is this mortal world. Who are you and who is your own? Where is the region whence you come? Brother, ponder on these things, he says. Boast not of youth or friends or wealth. Swifter than eyes can wink by time, each one of these is stolen away. Abjure the illusion of the world and join yourself to timeless truth. Give up the curse of lust and wrath. Give up delusion, give up greed. Remember who you really are. There's the key. Fools are they that are blind to self, the divine self. Cast into hell, they suffer there. What do we mean? Is it a theological hell? No. Cast into a place of misery, your own environment. Make a temple or tree your home. Clothe yourself in the skin of a deer and use the bare earth for your bed, avoiding gifts and sense delights. You may say, he is saying, go and become a sadhu. No, he's saying that make a temple or tree your home. Be content with what you have, in other words. And go the extra mile so that every day becomes a slight intensification of spiritual practice, drawing you nearer to your goal. What is the goal? Manifesting this divinity. Avoiding gifts and sense delights, that's the main thing. Could any fail to be content, blessed with dispassion such as this? Be not attached to friend or foe. And by the way, people spend a fortune at summertime doing exactly these things. Going off, leaving their home, going into a nice bed and breakfast somewhere, a different environment. Be not attached to friend or foe, to son or kinsman, peace or war. If you aspire to Vishnu's realm, that is the all-pervading one, look upon all things equally. And so it goes on. Control yourself, restrain your breath, and so it goes on. So a whole poem he makes like that. Now Vedanta is very simple. We can describe it with one hand, 4 principles. And we can say that Vedanta, first of all, has this principle and therefore solves this problem. What is that? It says, firstly, that you are that divine self. This is the conviction. When you analyze it, when you go through step by step, using the Upanishads, for example, as a guide, there you can go inward, saying that there is a body made from food, such as the Taittiriya Upanishad does, like sheaths. You can remove each one. I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. And then you can discover, just through logic, discover theoretically the existence of what is there. But how will you do it in actuality, in practice? You have to take that conviction and use that conviction in a practical way. And the way that most people choose is love, attachment, and dedication to the personal ideal who is always there constantly as a guiding light. So what are these 4 things and their functions? Well, divinity of the soul, I mentioned first. How can we understand that? We understand that in meditation. We understand it, the other principles in our waking life. So the next thing is the unity of existence. There is only one existence everywhere, and the oneness of the Godhead. We may have so many diverse religions, but if you understand the oneness of the Godhead, the fourth principle comes out, the harmony of religions. Every soul is divine, though during the state of ignorance or foolishness, it remains oblivious of its spiritual nature. We have to constantly remind ourselves of this. The Upanishads are full of it. These talks are full of it. The Bhagavad Gita is full of it. The lives of saints are full of it. The enlightened souls who bring us these teachings are full of it. And nature, if we have an eye to see it, is full of it also. So, while living here in the relative world, it assumes various bodies and identifies itself with them. It's then, of course, regarded as a small finite creature, the dividedness, the divisions. But then, if we have the art of seeing that being in all eyes, in all movements, in all hands, in every single being, that there is only a unity of existence itself, we have solved a great problem. No wars. The unity of existence is the foundation of all your ethical codes. So properly understood, it widens the bounds of charity, love of your neighbor, love thy neighbor as yourself. Why? Because it's only yourself. What you do by way of harm, in thought, in word or deed, or in action, you're doing to yourself. If you really understand that, will you deliberately harm yourself? Will you get up in the morning and say, oh my goodness, I was lying on my side and my arm went numb. So this is an evil arm. I'll get my right arm to do battle with it and attack it. No, it's the same body. If we did this, then all wars would stop. And we learn from the highest position in the non-dualistic Vedanta that the true self of a person is the self of all beings. So constantly see the self in all beings and all beings in the self. This is our practical thing. Now, if you ask me, what should I do to solve all my problems, to remove my fear, remove my doubts, and remove my attachment to the sense world, which is relatively real only, what will I do? See the self in all beings. And Bhagavad Gita puts it a step further, see me, that is, see God in all beings, in all things. I have a problematic person in front of me. No, see the divine in all beings. I can't. Well, then use your imagination. See there, Krishna dancing there. That's the art of removing foolishness. The art of keeping it there is to bypass all that and say, yes, but in the real world. What do you mean by the real world? Yes, that's all good for philosophy, but this person is problematic and I feel this and that will happen. Nobody likes me, etc. All of these are monologues going on that not only are harmful to you, but harmful to your environment as well. They create your world in front of you. And so that's why you're going round and round like the blind, being led by the blind, going round and round and round. What do we call samsara? Just never ending around. Like being on a merry-go-round. I want to get on, I want to get off. I remember as a child, I was on one of these things going round and round, and I was mesmerized by the middle or something, and I got dizzy and fell off. If you say, well, that's how it is in spiritual life, no, it's not like that. You won't harm yourself, you won't hurt yourself at all, but you'll get off this dizzying thing that we are so addicted to, caught up in that, and not feeling we can't get out, and using the excuse, but and if. Yeah, all right, yes, all the see the God in everybody, yes, yeah, but this person, no. You're going back into the round. You're getting caught back up into the vortex again. Oh, don't do that. And the oneness of the Godhead is well emphasized in that statement in the Vedas. Ekam sat vipra bahuda vadati. I quote it many times in interfaith meetings. Truth is one. Wise people, not the foolish, the wise people call this variously. So when religions argue amongst themselves, claiming exclusivism, is another avenue of foolishness. Because there's only one entity. And because of that one entity, all the religions are fundamentally true. Truth is one, where sages call it by various names. And these names, honored and worshipped by the various religions, are just symbols which enable our small, finite minds to grasp the infinite. We should not be fools, but we should be children. And children are not fools. You cannot fool children. Children pick up all the messages, facial, verbal, tone of voice, a look of disapproval or approval. Children pick it up all. They're like sponges. Don't forget, a child learns more in 2 years than many of us learn in a lifetime. They have to learn a whole language. And in adulthood, you imagine trying to learn a language, 3, 4, some people are gifted like that, but many people struggle. They have to go to a language tutor or a language course, learn grammar, vocabulary, all of this, do it in a structured way. A child doesn't do it like that. A child absorbs it and absorbs it as nouns first, table, chair, this, that, and then later joins it all together. By 2 years old, they're talking. A whole new language learned. A whole new way of moving is learned. How to crawl, how to stand, how to walk, how to run. A whole set of rules is learned. The child, when it's born, can't see it, has this fuzzy thing, but it feels, no doubt, and it hears the sound of a voice, and it sees the vague fuzziness of the mother's face, and it knows where the food is. What a wonderful miracle this is. So we can be like a child because we are, whether we know it or not, purely dependent. But of course, if we want independence, we have to acknowledge this immortality of the self. When we do that, it gives us strength. It gives us assertion. It gives us confidence. It removes our doubts. It removes our fear. Oneness removes our fear. All of this removes our fear. And we become loving, noble entities as well. But what is needed is steadfast loyalty to one's own ideal. Sri Ramakrishna tells it like this: a person trying to dig for water in one place, and some person comes along, oh, I wouldn't dig there if I were you. I'd dig over there by that tree. That's where you'll find water, no doubt. Like that, a half a dozen people come with their wise advice. He leaves off one hole, each 1 meter, 1 meter, 1 meter. Like that, 14 holes being dug. If he had dug down 14 meters in the same place, he would have struck water. So we don't shift and change. There's a dialogue once between one of the Shankaracharyas and a Christian came for conversion, and a long dialogue takes place. Then he says, you want to shift your religion, you want to become a Hindu, don't you think that God knows, is wise enough to make you born in a particular place, in a historical era, with a particular culture, with a particular religion? You think God was foolish? You think you should change it? No, deepen what you have. This is the principle. This is the principle of universality. If you think that we are an institution or organization that forces you to take up various Hindu techniques of puja and songs and so on and so forth, and ideas that you're not familiar with, why would you do that? Was God a fool? Did God make a mistake that you should change it? If it appeals to you and deepens it, fair enough. then you'll do it voluntarily. But the foundation is there, and God didn't make a mistake. Deepen your religion, deepen your well. It's not then that we have to be a fool and say, my religion is true. This is what I call gnosis,ism, as I say. My nose is the only true. Yours is a false nose because it's yours. Mine is a true nose because it's mine. So these are elements of foolishness, and we very, very carefully craft our level of foolishness, and this is called ego, the egoism. When we do the Enneagram and Essence of Truth, we explore this, that there are no standard egos, that these egos are carefully constructed, and we take great pride in them, like the emperor takes great pride in his clothes, and yet there's nothing there. It's a mask which is put on. Now, we don't destroy the mask because the mask is something that can be useful. But if we identify I am the mask, then we enter into a world of foolishness. And foolishness has its consequence. It makes us act like foolish children. Because be like a child, but that is childlike, but don't be childish. The big difference. Have the emotional intelligence not to be insulted, not to attack, not to react, etc. We were going to Sligo, we came back on a train, and there were some people who got into an argument, started acting and reacting, and started fighting on the train and so on and so forth. Were these wise people? Would you say, please sit down and tell me all about the secrets of the universe? And tell me what is my purpose, what is my direction in life, my teleology. Why does the universe here? Let me sit at your feet. These are not wise people. But they're not extraordinary people, they're ordinary people. They're people like you and me. They're people who fall for the magnetism of the sense world. And we enter into it. And that gives us problems, you must have noticed. So how do we get rid of those problems? We don't. We take the mind in a different direction. We get round it. And what we do, we understand that consciousness that normally flows out through the sense organs can be made to go inward. Kathopanishad tells us, one wise person goes inward. And when we go inward and see what consciousness is there as itself rather than expressed, then all the external world gets shut out. Is this being unrealistic? Is this hiding your head in the sand? No. It's getting into the depths of the richness of what is there within, a world of infinite possibilities. And the infinite possibilities expresses itself in your outward movements. And so the real jnani becomes of service to the world, not thoroughly introspective, becomes the resource for others, sharing his or her light and uplifting humanity on the principle of this oneness of existence. Anyway, we can leave it there. So I hope you enjoyed your April Fool's Day, and that we resolve we don't have to be actually that kind of fool, nor do we have to cultivate this art of foolishness that brings us so many internal and external problems. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thanks.
Thank you, Swami.